Hello everyone. So before you decide whether you have to watch this video or not, because this video may extend for about 30 to 40 minutes. So to help you decide if you were to watch the rest of this video, I have a small test. On the slide before you, you have 3 questions. The first question is a previous year's question asked in mains in GS paper 2. The second question is a question asked recently in Shankar Academy's Moksha test series. And lastly, this would be a very ordinary question, a normal question, right? So, do you have to really watch this video? You don't have to watch if you know the answer for the first 2 questions. If you can write at least for 2 pages for the first question, if you can write at least for 3 pages for the second question, okay? In that case, you don't even have to watch this video. You are all ready. But if you cannot even understand what this question actually is, and this is a UPSC question. So if you cannot even understand, if you don't even know what is the logic involved in this question, and similarly, if you cannot extend the second question beyond the first page, because it's a 250 word question, so if you cannot write more than 1 page, it's high time understand that this video is actually meant for you. It can help make you understand how different is mains preparation compared to prelims preparation. All knowledge about Article 279A talks about GST Council, which constitution amendment had introduced it. All of that is useless in tackling a question like this or a question like this. Both of these are related to the same topic of center-state relations. So that's where you have to pay keen attention to what I have to say for the remainder of this video. Alright. So now that we have made things clear, let me just walk you through what is the agenda of this session. What have I planned in my mind as I decided to record this video. Many of you have been asking me with a certain degree of impatience. Many aspirants, especially those who have not made it through prelims this year, so they seem to be more impatient than those who have even made it through prelims, right? The kind of questions I receive is, so can you please immediately give me a strategy on mains preparation for the next year's attempt, right? That sense of urgency, I feel it arises because there is a misunderstanding about how this mains process works, right? Because once you understand this mains process and how it works, you should understand you still have 400 more days before your next mains. So there is no sense of urgency at all. So that's why I decided, let me give you some clarification on the principles of mains preparation. And let me also tell you how to choose your reading resource. Because I find many aspirants, those who have not made it through prelims, are very, very tempted to just go and start reading this Prahar handout, the study material of some academy, right? And having gone through it and having understood where it can work, where it may not work, not just Prahar or any other handout for that matter, if you do not understand the expectations of UPSC in terms of its mains questions, you may not really understand what are you even supposed to read. So then you would simply be doing what everybody else does around you, right? And many of those who have read Prahar last year have not cleared mains. So then what makes them an authority and what makes you listen to their voice as if it's the gospel truth on what should be read for mains? So it's just to save you, it's just to safeguard you from wasting your time, dumping your mental space with garbage. That's the reason why this video is actually made, right? Because you need to know, first of all, what is the right reading resource. And in fact, does such a reading resource even exist? Yes, it does. For various subjects, there are certain right reading resources which I'll be referring to. Just because it takes a considerable amount of time to read, many aspirants would simply just overlook it, avoid it, wanting to go for shortcuts. Again, that mindset happens only because you believe you only have the next 60 or 70 days, which is actually entirely incorrect. Let me address that as I go about with my lecture. And then the other part of this discussion will discuss about how do you make notes, where do you make content from? Is it from previous year's questions? Is it from previous year's toppers materials? Right? So those aspects will be addressed. And lastly, I'll be addressing about how do you check the correctness of your content. Are you 100% sure that the content that you have made suits the demand of this examination? How do you put it to test? How do you revise your content? How do you keep value adding to your content? So those are the aspects that will be discussed. right? So let's get into the discussion and let me walk you through each of these aspects one by one. So first, starting with the basic principle of mains preparation. Understand that when it comes to prelims syllabus sheet, because for prelims mains there is a clear syllabus indicated by UPSC, right? So when you see the notification, there are syllabus indicated. So when it comes to prelims syllabus, the syllabus is very broad. The syllabus is indicative. It's not clearly elaborated. It only says for Indian polity, all salient features of constitution will be covered, recent amendments and important provisions of the constitution, which means that basically you have to read everything in the constitution, right? There is no separate area earmarked or demarcated as such, which means that your span of reading, the quantum of your reading, the quantity that you read with respect to polity has to be on the higher side, right? You should simply just know something about everything in the constitution, at least to the extent that you are on par with others. You are able to identify which is right, which is incorrect, as just like how others are able to do. That's the expectation out of you when it comes to prelims. But in mains, the span reduces, but the depth increases. UPSC goes to the depths. Why? If you look at the main syllabus sheet, the topics are clearly, they are laid out. UPSC has never asked a single question out of the topics that are indicated in the syllabus sheet. But just that year by year, year after year, the depth to which UPSC goes actually keeps on increasing, right? And the same philosophy would extend to personality test preparation. When you actually look into the aspects of personality test preparation, you have to only know everything about certain things. You don't have to know a lot of current affairs, but you should know everything about yourself, about your hobbies, about your hometown, about your optional subject, about your graduation subject. There are just so limited areas, and if you can only master them, and if you can only have a very meaningful conversation which actually brings out a lot of depth in your words, that's it. Your personality test has turned out to be in your favor, right? So mains is somewhere in between the depth of personality test and the span of prelims. Understand that, right? So that's the basic philosophy you should know. So since the topics from which questions will be asked is actually handed over to you, understand it is your work to actually be better than your peers in preparing to the depths that is required to impress the examiner who reads your paper, right? You cannot be as superficial as others, right? Because the topics have been handed over, everybody has what topics to prepare. So the person who prepares the best on every single topic actually ends up being better than the most, right? So understand this basic difference. In prelims, it's all about you have to be just like others. You should just not be lesser than others. But in mains, you have to be slightly above others. In personality test, you have to be very differentiated from others. It's the same kind of question which will be asked to every single mechanical engineer about India's manufacturing sector. It's the same kind of question that will be asked to every IRS officer who goes to the interview wanting to get into IAS. For them, it's the same taxation related questions that will be asked. So then why would some score 200 plus? Why would some score 160, 170? It's because the ones who score 200 are able to clearly differentiate themselves from the others. They have given this message to the board that they are the best. It means you don't have to be really the best, but you have to be better than the most. In prelims, you have to be just similar to the most, right? So understand, this is going to be the driving philosophy in your mains preparation for the next 400 days. Your time period is very different from those who are giving mains this year. They have only 70 days time, but you have 400 days. And understand, out of these 70 days, people who run, 15,000 people who run, just 2,500 will be making it. 12,500 are once again going to run the same race, right? So you are at a disadvantage. Understand that. Make up your mind that you have 400 days remaining, right? If you can only make up your mind that you have a long period of time, you would not even be looking at, oh, look at the syllabus sheet, what are the priority areas, what are the most important areas out of which questions are asked. Don't even do that, because this is not prelims. In prelims, we look at PYQs to get a sense of where is UPSC's questions more or less it's focused, right? Because UPSC has not given a syllabus in prelims. So you need to actually figure out, okay, for environment, UPSC seems to be focusing on pollution. Especially with pollution, UPSC seems to be focusing on non-degradable pollutants. To get such clues, we look into PYQs. Just because the syllabus is not clearly laid out for prelims, but for mains, syllabus is clearly laid out, which means that you don't have to look at PYQs to figure out what to prepare for. You have to simply prepare word by word of syllabus sheet. That's what I have written here. Syllabus sheet exhaustion is going to be your goal. Do not hunt for priority areas. Right? Don't look into some YouTube videos which guarantee you these are the important areas in polity to prepare for. Right? You have to just make sure at the end of the 400th day from now, when you actually end up writing your mains, every single word in the syllabus sheet is ticked off and you have considerable amount of content prepared on your own for every single word of the syllabus sheet. If not every single word, at least let it be the target, so that you end up finishing at least 80% of the syllabus sheet before you go to the next mains. So understand, trying to complete mains preparation before December or completing mains preparation before October is such a foolhardy thing to even dream about. It's only when you start forcing yourself to finish mains preparation before October, what happens is you will feel that all your preparation is shallow. Your content that you read would be shallow because you read from some borrowed ideas from others. You don't do your own original research. So the shallowness will keep you underconfident, and the same shallowness will drag you out of mains preparation after October, because that's when the prelims test series will start of various academies. You would immediately want to give up on mains preparation, wanting now to suddenly shift track to prelims. You suddenly feel that urge to clear prelims at the earliest, right? You don't have a consistent preparation strategy. That's the reason why I said that. Make up your mind, you have 400 days. Understand every single word of syllabus sheet has to be prepared because you have 400 days. Do not hunt only for select area reading. No, that is for those people who are giving their mains in the next 70 days. They cannot read every single word in syllabus sheet. So most probably, the test series that they enroll in will address those priority areas. Something to do with current affairs, something to do with yet to be asked areas. So for students, aspirants appearing in this year's mains, it makes better sense for them to go for priority areas. And trust me, even those students, every year they end up leaving 2 or 3 questions in every GS paper, which should not happen, but it ends up happening. Why? Because their preparation is not exhaustive. All of a sudden, one prelims, they end up clearing prelims. They could not believe that they have cleared prelims. Now they feel sudden shortage of time. Then they start mains preparation. So they end up having insufficient preparation to beautifully handle mains, which you should not be, because you have the next 400 days. Alright. And the third principle that you should remember is, do not go for question hunting or source hunting. Don't even look into some table which gives an analysis from the year 2013 till 2024. How many questions have been asked from world history, how much from post-independence, how much from modern India. Every year you will find the numbers keeps on varying. There could be 4 years when not a single question from world history would be asked, but all of a sudden in 1 year, 2 or 3 questions from world history would be asked. Last year, for example, in 2024 mains, most aspirants, many aspirants couldn't handle that one question out of the 2 questions asked in world history, which is about, I think, balance of powers of Europe, I think. Not very sure. But one question was a pretty challenging question. Right? Why? Because their world history preparation was very limited to only world wars. And that too, consequences of world wars, some basic causes of world wars. They haven't gone into that one aspect of world war about balance of powers. Right? That itself has some 10 points to write upon. Maximum they would be exposed to just 1 point in the, when they have prepared so much about world war, just 1 or 2 points they would have heard about balance of powers. That's all that they know. But somebody who has exhausted syllabus sheet properly, because syllabus sheet clearly says events of 18th century, 17th century, 18th century, sorry, not 17th. When you read world history syllabus, it clearly says events of 18th century, 19th century and 20th century. So it means 300 years of history of at least Europe, and also extending to some parts of Latin America, South America and some parts of Southeast Asia to be exhausted. Right? Somebody who has a long-term perspective of 400 days will definitely ensure all of these areas will get exhausted. Right? So the third idea is, don't even look for some trends. There could be there were 2 years in which not a single question from Representation of People's Act was asked. But I think in 2022 or 2023, whichever year, I'm not very sure, there were 2 questions asked in a single year from Representation of People's Act. And there was always a tricky aspect. 50% of the question is manageable. The remaining 50% requires a good factual idea about different sections of RPA. We will have that in a different session when I talk about the polity mains preparation strategies. Right? So, do not get into this mistaken belief that there is such thing called as a trend when it comes to UPSC, that UPSC will only ask questions from certain areas. Right? Or UPSC will not even ask questions from post-independence consolidation. No. Every aspect of syllabus sheet has to be well taken care of, because you are not writing mains in the next 70 days. You have a long time. So these are the fundamental truths. These are the fundamental philosophies based on which All India rank 1 to 100 would be doing their preparation next year. And if you would want to fit into these ranks, your preparation is also supposed to be on the same lines. Right? So now, as I've already told you, don't fix this mental barrier that your mains preparation has to be finished before October or December. No. Let me narrate something from my own personal experience. Of my 2 or 3 years of my civil service exam preparation, all I remember was I was doing enormous amount of history optional preparation, because that was my optional. So every day some amount of reading of optional was going on. Right? And all I know, as having done some dedicated prelims preparation, there were just 3 subjects, because you have a very good book called Lakshmikant. Simply read every page again and again for polity. And since history was my optional, I did not even read a single NCERT of history. Never done that. The other solid books I read was for geography. You have a couple of NCERTs and Gochan Leo. Right? Apart from that, what book do you even have to read? I don't remember reading Vivek Singh, Ramesh Singh, because if at all I get a doubt in economy, simply one browsing for 5 minutes gives me a good clarity on concepts. With that, I'll be able to make sense of the newspaper article. So I never felt there was a single book for which I have to read economics from. Right? Similarly for science, what is there to read? Environment, never read anything. These are all covered by ordinary browsing habit. Right? What I'm trying to say is, all I remember doing throughout my 2 or 3 years was one optional preparation. The other one was simply tremendous amount of mains preparation for 2 or 3 years. Because the syllabus sheet is so clear, so good, so well designed, that every single word in the syllabus sheet has so much of scope to be prepared at least for 3 or 4 days. You take fundamental rights, a syllabus that's given in GS paper 2, all the case laws regarding fundamental rights from the resource that I'll be suggesting as a part of this video. When you start reading from that resource, it will easily take you 1 full day to simply just prepare for Article 19. Right? Because you are not going to read from Lakshmikant, but you are going to read from the resource that I am going to suggest to you. If you read from that book, you get all the important case laws. You get all philosophical understanding about Article 19. And I feel a very nice 8 to 9 hours a day can be easily spent just on mastering the ideas behind Article 19 and how all Supreme Court has looked into it. A topic called as parliamentary privilege that's given in your Lakshmikant in 2 pages. The way I had prepared, I remember I spent 2 days to prepare for this topic, because there are just so many case laws, there are so many PDF articles to read from. Right? So let's assume every GS paper, GS1 has at least 50 themes, GS2 has 50 themes, so around 200 themes. And even if I have to spend 2 or 3 days per theme, it beautifully, very well, easily occupies at least 400 to 500 days of my preparation. Right? A slow preparation, but a very strong preparation, that at the end of 400 days, the goal is, while others get 0 marks in this question, you get 2.5 marks. While others get 2.5 marks in this question, you get 5 marks. While others get 4.5 marks in this question, you get 5.5 marks. This is the secret in cracking mains. I'll show my mark sheet one day, in which you'll find that my score in GS paper 2 was actually higher than the All India rank 1. Right? The reason is because so much of effort had gone in preparing for polity and governance, just because these 2 subjects contributed 200 marks in your mains. right? So this is the principle. The principle is when others get 0, you should get 2.5 marks, because others cannot even break a question, they cannot even interpret a question. But your wider preparation, your deep preparation, your sustained preparation, your revised preparation, right? When you test your content against a test, now you feel the shortcomings, now you start revising. All of that fetches this additional 2.5 marks, right? So this is the goal. This is the vision with which we set about the next 400 days preparation, right? So that's why I've written mains preparation is an ongoing process till you clear, right? Even the day before your next prelims 2026, the day before that, when you read a Hindu editorial, your mind should actually add to the content that you already have with respect to mains, if at all there is something useful for your mains in that day's editorial. You cannot say it is only those aspirants who try to segment periods of preparation. Some people, they segment till October or November I'll prepare for mains. After that prelims. So it's these aspirants who will stop reading newspaper after month of November or December. I meet a lot of aspirants who say, so till December I was reading newspaper, but since December I have stopped reading because I got into prelims preparation. I don't understand why would getting into prelims preparation stop you from reading newspaper. It means you have not understood the goal of this preparation process in its totality, right? So understand that the mains preparation, it's a continuous process, it's a continuous ongoing process till the day you clear. The preparation for mains, preparation for personality test, preparation for essay, it's all hand in hand. Prelims all goes hand in hand, right? So try to integrate your prelims preparation from now on. Don't even think that your prelims preparation has to start only from October or November. No, every day is a day, at least 1 hour of your time or 2 hours of your time for prelims preparation. How? Let's say I give you a target, go and prepare and you make your own original content for parliamentary privileges as a topic. So you start reading all the resources that I'll be referring. For 2 or 3 days you prepare just for this parliamentary privilege. Let's say you spend 4 to 5 hours every day, because other 4 to 5 hours should be spent on optionals. So if you start spending 4 to 5 hours on parliamentary privileges, all you need to do after preparing a 10-page content of your own, just take your Lakshmikant, within 15-20 minutes, brush over the pages, the content relevant to parliamentary privileges. This is how you smartly integrate your prelims preparation also as a part of mains preparation, right? The goal is to keep doing your mains preparation until you clear this exam. Before December, you have to become really good with at least 3 prelims subjects. Let it be polity, history, geography, or polity, geography, environment. The choice is yours, right? By December, 3 bookish subjects. Okay, I would rather prefer 3 bookish subjects. My choice was always polity, history, and geography. Right? It is these areas which I would try to master before the December itself, so that from January onwards, my prelims goals will be different. My prelims goal is to keep on getting exposed from the tests of different academies, all current relevant ideas, areas from environment and science, and try to fill in all those small gaps lying in unaddressed in polity, history, and geography, right? So this would be the plan. You can actually segment your prelims preparation. You can choose areas to master before December, and then choose altogether new areas, right? But when it comes to mains preparation, it's a constant influencing process. Your opinions that you have already made, all those get constantly revised in the light of new wisdom that you receive from editorials, in the light of new wisdom you receive out of reading new articles, right? So it's an ongoing process, all right? It's only when you think that you only have the next 100 days for your mains preparation or next 150 days for your mains preparation, you will burn out. You put in mad effort, daily 12 hours, 10 hours, just focusing on some reading, some prahar. That prahar material itself is like 15-20 booklets. Okay, for ethics they have a booklet, for environment they have a booklet. And every booklet that I see, to read that will definitely take at least 5 to 10 days. 150 days, just the first round of reading, and after that, nothing remains in your mind. Most of the content in the booklet is already things that you know, right? And that is not a usable content that you actually get, right? I'll come to all of that. What is a usable content? What is a extendable content? What is a differentiable content? All of that is there in the upcoming portion of this video, right? So learn to last, learn to sustain for the next 400 days. That's more important. Sustaining happens when you get this mental confidence that, okay, 2 days I spent on Representation of People's Act, based on that, today I stand better than what I was when I had appeared in this year's prelims. Oh, I seem to have made my own notes for 20-25 pages on this topic. And after making the notes, now when you look at some academies test question papers, you feel, okay, seems every question can be managed just from the raw content that I have made, right? That is the first level of success that you get. Because if you had to read this Prahar, let's say you read polity, Representation of People's Act, some lot of data is just dumped over there. You start memorizing things. And now after you feel that you have read polity, you look at a question paper. If you're not able to use that content, your confidence gets shattered. You feel all the time I have spent now is a waste of time. You feel weak. And in this weakness that slowly develops inside you, you actually let go of this mains preparation. The cycle keeps on happening again and again. Ignore mains. Because of that, you wouldn't clear prelims also, because a lot of mains ideas are also influences your chances of clearing prelims. Then once again, the same cycle year after year after year, you end up failing. See, people who clear mains once, or people who get into service once, they will have a continuous track record of clearing mains again and again. Maybe they may end up failing in prelims, but they'll all have continuous track record of clearing multiple mains, because they have just understood what is mains preparation. They have understood what it makes their content very unique, whereas many aspirants do not, right? So that's why let this mindset problem no longer exist. Let us be very clear about what is the path ahead, right? With this, let us just now go forward and discuss something about the content making process. So the next area is about content making, right? So aspirants, when they ask me, sir, tell me the book list and how should I make content? How should I make content out of toppers' notes? Because previous year's toppers, they have shared their notes on their Telegram channel, so I think I have to make content out of their notes, right? So let me guide you through that process as well, because there's a lot of content making that you will be involving in from now on, okay? And it's very, very important that you take up the responsibility to ensure the content is usable, the content stands out from others' content, it's differentiated from others, and the differentiation doesn't happen simply because you have a set of facts with you, right? All facts that you have made note of without having a vision as to what would be the question in which you would be making use of these facts are useless facts. If you cannot imagine a possible question where you can use this fact, you can plug in these facts, they are waste, they are useless, right? So that's why it's important you need to know that even content making has certain principles to it, all right? So how do you actually start? How do you start this work of making content? First, you have certain tools in your hands, right? What are those tools? First is PYQs, right? And don't tell me that PYQs have to be referred simply to understand what all questions have been asked, what all areas UPSC asks questions. That's not the objective behind why we look at previous year's questions. The reason why you refer previous year's questions is to simply understand how UPSC makes its questions difficult to handle, right? And I have made a video which I'll be recording by tomorrow. Okay, so this is the video that you'll be finding on my channel, and the link to this video, I'll be sharing it tomorrow in the comment of this particular video. So what am I going to discuss in that video? It's about UPSC's ways to make CSE mains challenging, right? So the reason why I look at previous year's questions is to figure out in what all ways are questions turning out to be difficult to handle. I don't look at PYQs to figure out what areas to prepare, because the syllabus sheet clearly says what areas to prepare, what topics to prepare. So then what business do I even have to look at PYQs to figure out what areas to prepare for? And as I already have said, there's no such thing called as a trend that only this area would be asked. And my perfect belief with respect to UPSC when it comes to mains preparation is questions don't repeat. At least 70 to 80% of the questions in mains, they don't repeat. Never was a question on fjords that was asked repeated. Never was a question on different color scheme used for cyclone predictions repeated. Air quality index, what are the parameters to measure? Never was it repeated, right? So the point is UPSC, the previous year's questions have to be looked into for you to figure out how all UPSC makes the questions difficult. That will decide how all you should be looking at study materials. Should you read it superficially? Should you go to depth? Should you have more exploration? Should you keep on supplementing it with better and better reading, better and better material? The extent to which your depth of content has to be developed can only be understood when you have a clear understanding about how UPSC makes its questions difficult to handle. Right? So it is to help you with that. I will be making this video and uploading it by tomorrow. Alright? So first, before you make your content, make sure you look at the PYQs to understand how deep should you be getting into certain topics. For example, in government schemes, I would say that you don't have to get into the depths, because UPSC knows there are just so many government schemes, so it asks very limited depth in government schemes. But when it comes to often repeated themes like federalism, right, or fundamental rights, what more can UPSC ask? So it starts getting into some unexplored novel areas, right? So it is to get that sense of where depth should be put into, where you don't have to read too deep. To get that sense, this PYQ analysis should be first done. Next, have a look at toppers' answers, because all toppers now have Telegram channel and they would all be uploading their study material, right? But understand, when you go and look into topper study material, for example, this is a study material by one of the top, right? So when I go through it, this is actually a history optional study material, not the GS. When I go through it, since I have read all these ideas from a book, I am able to relate to that. But if I have not read it from a book, and if I were to look into the study material as such, I cannot make any sense of anything that is there in the study material. It's all notes that are made as hints. These are not notes made by a topper to give it to somebody else for them to prepare from scratch. Understand this limitation that lies with topper study materials, right? But again, I would recommend you to look at the topper study materials, topper's notes. Why? Simply to get inspired. You should feel that, okay, the topper has put in so much of original hard work. So what is then stopping me from putting in the similar hard work? It's just to inspire you, not to copy the content. If you copy, you would become a poor imitation of the topper, right? You would not know the undercurrents behind each and every sentence, each and every word. There is a lot of reading that the topper has actually put in. You wouldn't know the undercurrents. You would only know what is there above the surface. And you will start believing that is the truth. Your foundations are going to be weak. A slight twist in the way questions are asked, you will not even realize that this is the content that should be even delivered for that question. Right? So that's why, before you start preparing your content, look at PYQs, understand the depth and direction in which your content making should get into. Getting a good sense of PYQs. My yardstick of whether a person is really into mains preparation is if they can actually recollect all the questions of different subjects asked in the 3 or 4 previous years. Right? The minute I ask them, can you give me a few questions asked in 2023 in post-independence consultation, if they can actually at least recollect the themes and areas, if not the exact wording of the question, it means they are serious about mains preparation. Everybody else are not actually getting into mains preparation. You are still being a passive recipient of whatever others ask you to do. And mains preparation is a creative work. The creation of an answer should come from within. Alright, so the first reference is PYQ, second reference is toppers answers, just toppers, not answers, the study materials, just to get inspired, just to understand how much more distance you have to travel, and you still have 400 days to travel, right? Because it's only with 400 days, even those toppers would have also made such exhaustive mains content. They could not have made within 70 days or 80 days. So that's why come out of this mindset that your mains preparation should only go on till December. No, alright. And do not even read this handouts of any academies when they give you something called as a main study material, because main study material is so dynamic, right? Because questions don't repeat. I'll give you an example to prove it to you that it's waste of time reading this study material. This is a question asked in Civil Service Exam 2024. Okay, it's a very specific question asked about CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General. The duty of CAG is not merely to ensure the legality of expenditure, but also its propriety. Okay. Now imagine, usually people think that Lakshmikant is totally useless for mains, but that is not my opinion. Okay, a lot of aspects of Lakshmikant would help you initiate an answer, right? Because when you read the CAG chapter, there is a one full paragraph given about wisdom audit, about proprietary audit, performance audit, right? Just by reading that one paragraph content, you will actually be able to write something for this question. But if you were to read this Prahar material, okay, this Prahar material, which has about some content about CAG, for 2 pages it has content. Just understand the demand of this question. The question does not ask you to talk about the independence of CAG. The question does not expect you to know the appointment procedure of CAG. The question does not ask you to talk about all the points about the different constitutional provisions regarding CAG. None of that is necessary to answer this question. All you need to know is what is proprietary audit, how was it actually performed on the field. That exposure is what alone could have helped you handle this question. Is that available in Prahar? No. You have so many points on independence of CAG. Why is it given here? Because there was a question asked in one of the years on CAG where the independence aspect was tested. So no wonder the study material has some 6 points, which is useless because that aspect of CAG is never going to be repeated in the upcoming years. But a new aspect has been asked. And what is that new aspect? About performance audit. That part is given as just 3 lines here. That is the reason why I say do not be gullible victims to others' opinions as to what is a study material. Right? And if you say that, no, there are some questions like, for example, NALSA, there was a question asked about Legal Service Authority. That is actually there in Prahar. Don't you think that is anyway there as a separate chapter in Lakshmikant? Why would you then have to read this to understand that? Don't you think you have already cleared prelims? Do you think you would have cleared prelims without having sufficient knowledge about National Legal Service Authority? Trust your Lakshmikant book better than all these resources. If you want to go beyond Lakshmikant, I'll show you a way forward for that. So imagine a student who has simply read this Prahar before their mains, assuming it blindly to be the material to read, cannot handle this question. It's better to read Lakshmikant so as to have handled this question than this Prahar. But the best way to have prepared for this is to simply type on Google analysis of CAG's functioning, right? Because why? Syllabus sheet says CAG, issues regarding its functioning, all of that is given in the syllabus sheet. Just type it in Google, analysis of CAG's functioning in India, PDF. And all you need to do is just open any of the PDFs. For example, I have opened this particular PDF, right? I don't even know who this person is. Some professor, assistant professor in a college have written a paper on unveiling the role of CAG in safeguarding good governance, a critical analysis. So it's the analytical part, which is actually the focus of me. So this entire document is for 5 to 6 pages, not more than that. But this document has the best content anybody in India could have prepared for a question like this. Why? You have every aspect of different aspects of audit. What is proprietary audit, efficiency audit, performance audit, environment audit. I'll tell you the best answer for this question is an answer which mixes all these aspects. If you can only mix and match all these aspects and bring it in your answer, your work is done, right? And let me tell you, the 30 minutes you would have spent reading this Prahar material, you probably should have read 1 hour reading this particular study material. And this 1 hour of reading, twice the time that you have spent reading this document, actually helps you in getting a 4.5 marks for a question like that. When you read Prahar, you get 0 marks or probably half mark. You read Lakshmikant, you get 1 mark on the same question, right? So this is the purpose, this is the intent behind mains preparation. So the best way as to how you can prepare for your mains is create your own content. Do not depend on what others are reading. Whatever others are reading is what is actually pushing all of them out. You don't actually tend to see, there are toppers who have managed the same question. I've asked toppers, how did you manage to write this? Did you read from any external sources? A few of them said they have read from external sources. Many aspirants who have cleared last year, when I asked them the same question on this topic, all they said was, sir, I just managed to write something based on what I have read from Lakshmikant. Yes, minimum content but good writing skill can compensate for questions like this, right? So that can give you 3.5 marks, when others who would have read Prahar with poor writing skill would get 0 marks or half marks or 1 mark. If you have simply read Lakshmikant, if you have decent writing skills, you get 3.5 marks. But if your preparation was a long-term preparation, like the way I have told you, if you have read some papers, because this is the only way how I had read for my mains preparation. right? Based on interesting reading of things which I know equips me better than my friends. The day after I have read a source, when I go and talk to my friends, I understand that they are so ignorant about what I know about a particular topic, and that gives me the confidence that okay, I'm having an edge amongst my peers, right? That constant sense of reassurance was keeping me going on with this interesting way of preparing. All right, and it's not so difficult to spot these resources. All you need to ask is the right questions. You only need to know. That's why I said you have to look into PYQs, not to find out CAG's content has to be prepared. That is anyway there in your syllabus sheet, but to know what all depths have been asked in previous year's mains questions. That gives you a sense of what would be the right question to type in Google. Once you type in the right question, your work is done. You get the resources. And whichever resource you feel is easy to read, because there will be at least 10 different papers on this topic. Some could be 300 pages long, some could be 30 pages long, some could be 3 pages long. You be the judge of that. If you feel the other document seems to be interesting, that could be voluminous, but it may actually give a lot of light on the topic, right? And if you decide to spend time, you are more than welcome to spend time. For example, the best source till date to read about representation of peoples act. This is one of the topic given in GS paper 2 syllabus sheet. The best resource to read for this topic till date that I have come across is just one document, the 255th Law Commission's recommendations. Nothing beats this document, and to read it completely and to understand it, to make notes and to make summary out of that, it takes you not more than 3 days. But imagine at the end of 3 days of continuous study, you actually become good enough to attempt one question perfectly, flawlessly. Getting that sense of guarantee is what mains preparation is all about. It doesn't matter whether you spend 1 week preparing for a content, but at the end of 1 week, are you in a position that any kind of question asked on this topic, will you be able to write something? Your work is finished, you are a success, right? Because I feel there is no reason why otherwise aspirants would leave 2 or 3 questions unattempted. Okay, you leaving 2-3 questions unattempted, it means that your study material was not right. Alright, so this is one aspect which I really wanted to insist upon. So the point here is, this is your tools. Prahar is not your tool, Mains 365 is not your tool. PYQs and previous year's toppers notes are definitely guides for you as to decide what would be the right reading material. And once you have decided the right reading material, now spend time. And you wouldn't be hesitant to spend time when you know that there is a long-term plan. Right. So how to identify the right sources? I already told you, some could be 3 pages long, 30 pages, 300 pages long. But whichever makes you feel that you have more than enough knowledge than your peers, that is the right reading material. Right? Say for example, I'll give you an illustration. For the purpose of polity and constitution, what would be the right reading material? I'm sure after reading of Lakshmikant, after reading Law Commission's report on electoral reforms, right? If you look at the previous year's questions from this video that I was referring to you, right, where I have analyzed how UPSC makes questions challenging. If you watch that video carefully, you would actually get to know how I look at UPSC's ways of making polity questions difficult, right? How would polity questions be made difficult? Suddenly UPSC would ask you what is the election methodology between Indian president and French president. Okay, at the best, aspirants would read about US president election method. They would know how to compare it against Indian president, but French president, they would be clueless. Or UPSC will suddenly ask you about how was affirmative action practiced in US versus in India. That was the UPSC for previous year question. Or UPSC may ask how was US secularism principles in its US constitution different from Indian constitution. You see, these are the ways how UPSC makes questions difficult, right? Getting into the specifics of other constitutions, right? We don't actually bother to read about the specifics of other constitutions. We only know the broad ideas of other constitutions and specifics of Indian constitution. But UPSC gets into the specifics of other constitutions. That's one way of how polity questions are made difficult. And the other way is my opening question that I have showed you at the beginning of this video, where questions that you cannot even understand in what context it is actually asked, right? When you read Lakshmikant, you will never get the idea of what is harmonious construction. You will never understand what is federal supremacy. So is there a way to navigate it then? Is there a way how you could have prepared by a single source? You could have understood a single source which could have helped you make a comparison between all other constitutions in every aspect. Let it be parliamentary system. How do you make comparison between other parliamentary forms? When it comes to federal systems, let's say between Canada and Australia, these are Commonwealth countries, and India versus Canada versus Australia. Is there a book that actually makes this perfect comparison? Yes, there is. Can the same book give you all the handy case laws that you need to substantiate your answers for fundamental rights? Yes, the same book can do that. And that's the book called as MP Jain's Constitutional Law. Do aspirants read it? I don't know whether the toppers have read it or not, but definitely they were smart enough to prepare content at least from somebody who has read from this and this, somebody who have made notes out of that. That is what makes an all India rank 1. They themselves may not have read from MP Jain, but they had a smart teacher, they had a smart way of preparing, which gave them the same exposure as to the content in MP Jain. Right? So what I'm saying is, choose a resource that is broad based. Okay, so MP Jain would cater to that. This one, for example, I'll show you distribution of powers in other federations. So this reading ideas about how federal system works in Canada. In Canada, you have three-fold system. In India, you have three-fold system. But in India, you have center can make laws on state subjects. But in Canada, that can never happen. Okay, so the watertight compartmentalization is very strong in Canada. All right, and this mutual delegation of powers, which can happen in the Indian context, where state governments can hand over powers in the hands of center to make laws, that can never happen in Canada. With respect to interstate trade and commerce, provisions are very different between India and Canada, whereas provisions are similar between India and Australia when it comes to interstate trade and commerce provisions. So where do you get all these comparative ideas from? From this book, MP Jain. And the same MP Jain book can help you give all the case laws about emergency. What happened in state of Rajasthan case? What happened in SR Bombay case? So these knowledge are essential to handle a question on case laws regarding emergency powers misuse. And this was a question asked this year or last year. Okay, there was a question asked, what are the different political and legal factors that have reduced the misuse of 356? Political factors, you can say emergence of multi-party system and all of that. But legal factors, you need to know these two case laws. What better way than to read from the single book? Similarly, when you want to make a comparison between parliament, between India and other countries, again, assessment of the role of Raj is about how does a second house function between India and other constitutions. No material exists anywhere, as far as I know, from any academy's reading material, but this caters to this purpose. Right? So that's what is the yardstick to figure out whether a reading material is a right reading material or not. It has to be comprehensive, it has to be broad-based, it has to be deep enough, and of course it takes time. That's why I said a bulk of your time can very well be spent on polity and governance, because that alone is like 200 marks. That alone is like one single paper in GS. So if you have 400 days to prepare, why not spend at least 60 to 80 days only on polity and governance? And I can assure you, you will have the best material in India at the end of this period of your preparation. Alright, so this is just indicator. Okay, so I'm just giving you an example of choosing polity. Similarly, there are very distinct methods, distinct reading materials that can be chosen and prepared for every single subject of your mains GS papers, which I'll be discussing in the subsequent sessions. Now coming to the last part, now that you have made all your content, what is the guarantee that your content is right? That's why you have to take tests. You have to take tests only after preparing your content, not before it. So when you prepare your content, when you write tests, right, how do you figure out whether the content that you've prepared is right or wrong? For very difficult questions, when most of your friends have left it unattempted, if there are such kind of questions, if you can just initiate some writing, if you can only take it to meaningfully to 1.5 pages, 50% to 60% of the word space, if you're able to fill, your content has helped you do that. Right? You can be reassured about the correctness of your content. For moderate questions, where the question can be interpreted, where something out of Lakshmikant can help you start an answer, but it is your content which helps you in filling the pages. Your content is rightly prepared then. But for previous year question themes, but for often repeated questions, okay, That's why I said that you need to have a sense of all the previous year questions of mains. Only then, when you attempt a question in your academy, you will be able to figure out, okay, this question is actually based on previous year's questions of UPSC. And for such kind of question, if you can bring unique content which others have not brought in, right? Because everybody else will be handling such kind of PYQs based questions, because everybody is exposed to those areas that would have been taught as a part of their normal curriculum in the academy. So everybody knows to write a good answer, but have you written the best content, best value addition for that? Very differentiable content. If you can, the preparing source is right source. If this is the yardstick, right? For easy questions, can you bring a very differentiable answer? Moderate questions, can you fill in the pages? For very tricky questions, very difficult questions where others cannot even touch the question, can you simply initiate a discussion for those answers? If you can do that, the content that you have been preparing is actually the right content. You can be reassured about it. Alright, so that's why I gave you this example of these 3 questions in the beginning of this discussion. Right, this would be the most difficult question. When others get 0, can you get 1.5 to 2 marks? You are a winner. This is a moderate question. Right, when others can start writing something, can you fill in all the pages required? Yes, your content is good. And this is a simple question. Right, everybody can write a decent answer, but can you write the best answer? Again, your content is good. Alright, so these are the basic principles which I feel I should be conveying to you, so as to help you look forward to your mains preparation for the next 400 days. And subject-wise strategies will follow in the upcoming weeks. Alright, so I hope it was useful for all of you, and we'll meet in the next session. Thank you.